Hello, and welcome to Partners Beyond Parenthood, the podcast that helps new parents thrive without losing themselves. My name is Saba Bosuener, and in today's episode, I am joined by my husband, Leo. Very excited to have him here today. We're going to be covering a topic which is called How to Trick Your Kid into Becoming Successful. And no, it's not what you think. It's actually a framework from a book that we picked up called How to Raise Successful People by Esther Wojcicki. Hope I'm saying that right. And to not have you sit there and look so awkward, I'm just going to have you explain the framework.
Thank you, my love. So, fantastic book. I actually received it as a recommendation as we were preparing for this new chapter of being parents. And so Esther Wojcicki, who supposedly is the grandma of Silicon Valley, talks about T.R.I.C.K, which stands for trust, respect, independent, collaboration, and kindness, which is a framework that resonated with us instantly. I'm going to say me. So I'll speak on. Okay. Which resonated with us instantly, in the sense that when it comes to raising our daughter, how we envisioned how we wanted to raise her, and many of the conversations that we had super early on were that we wanted to raise her to be as independent as possible as early on. And so trust, for example, means that you give your kid choices as early on as possible. So as soon as they're able to dress themselves, you give them the choice to dress themselves, pick out their outfit, or decide on what they want to eat from a selection that you present them. So you trust them to make independent choices. That's something that resonated with me very strongly.
One thing I've definitely had to trust my daughter to do, and my partner, my husband, is trusting them to go further away. For example, she is a little adventurer, explorer. She will walk and walk and walk. Occasionally, she might look back and check if we're there, but I've actively had to keep myself back to trust and know that she's not going to just run off. And that's been hard, but those are some of the elements of trust that we've tried to implement with our daughter. So that's one of them. The second one you mentioned was respect.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to respect, it's also respecting their boundaries. So now that our daughter is evolving into an almost 2-year-old toddler, it's
the tiny terrorist toddlers.
Fascinating and interesting to see how she has she's becoming very stubborn in what she wants to do and how she wants to do certain things.
You're essentially trying to treat her as your equal, which is really hard to do when you have a child.
Yeah.
They still have so much to learn. You want to teach them things, or, I guess you're just parenting them, but trying to respect and parent at the same time almost sounds counterintuitive, yet it's respecting their wishes, respecting that they have their own opinions, that they are going to make their own choices. And obviously this is something that is more applicable as they get older. We can't implement everything from the get-go right now as perhaps it's out, laid out within this framework. But the idea is that we respect her from the get-go, or any kids that we have in the future, to trust their choices, to, use confidence in their decision-making, and just know that however we're parenting them is going to lead them into confident choices because we respect them as an equal. All right. So that is respect. The next one was
independence. So a fantastic example that the author actually gave in the book, which I was almost taken a bit aback by, was that so she has she raised her kids in the 70s, 80s, I want to say, and during those times
in the US,
exactly, in San Francisco, and obviously the landscape has changed quite a bit with a 24/7 news cycle and what we consume nowadays, and how much more fearful many of us are nowadays because we get bombarded with news all day, every day. But so the author had a mindset where early on she raised her kids to be super independent in the sense that hey, you can go out when the day starts and you just come back when the streetlights come on. So that was something that apparently in that area was very, very common. Becomes less common nowadays, at least when speaking to our friend circle. But what I love is that she referenced an example where she drops off her grandkids at Target to do their preschool shopping. And so the granddaughters are 6 and 8 years old, drops them off at Target, tells him like, hey, I'm going to be back in 2 hours because I have to drop off your brother at the haircutter. And then she leaves them be completely independent to do their own shopping at Target without any adult supervision or anyone, any close family member being close by. So I thought that was like eye-opening to me, like how much independence you can trust kids with, because I feel like nowadays that's less and less common, whereas in the past I think that was like pretty common, that like many of us and generations before us just went out to play in the woods and came back before it was dark. And so she did that with her granddaughters, came into a massive argument with her kids. And yeah, I thought that was a fascinating framework that actually gave us a lot of content to talk about as well.
A lot. When I heard that part of the story, I was literally thinking, oh my God, I mean, that's great. That's really cool. You know, in the end, nothing happened to the kids. They gained a lot of independence. Again, and it comes within the whole framework, you know, like they were trusted to do stuff at their age, when nowadays we may think like, oh my God, what can a 6-year-old do? But actually they're so capable. So I think it was really eye-opening to, you know, get that story. It's opened my mind to seeing how much you can trust and know that your kids will be independent at an earlier age. That said, I think I would always look at the surroundings, our environment. And I know that falls a lot back into fear and the media and thinking like your kid's going to get snatched and all these different things. But the idea is really just, you know, thinking that with their independence, they're strong enough and able to do these kind of things. And that's really what is behind this framework of knowing that young kids are so much more capable than we think.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see how we're going to develop in the future, because I think we have slightly differentiating parenting philosophies when it comes to that. But that's why I love that you do this podcast, because you get to talk to so many different people and we get to talk about like new ideas and perspectives. And then the next one was collaboration, which again, when I think of collaboration, I think of like, oh, how do kids collaborate in like a school setting? Like, how do they learn like teamwork early on? But what I actually loved about the book is that Esther, the author, was giving her kids a lot of like independence in collaborating on like family plans. So like whenever they did like family vacations, they gave their kids the choice, like, hey, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? And they gave them like 3 different choices. And then once the kids decided whether they want to go to like Disneyland or like whether they want to go to like a water park or whatever else it may be, they then had the authority to like come up with the entire plan. They were booking the hotels, or they were looking at hotels along the way. They planned like the whole itinerary, which I think is really, really cool, because it gives kids agency at a very early age, and it makes them feel as a valued member of the family, rather than just like someone that you make decisions over. So I love that as well.
Absolutely agree with that. I think, I can't remember where, but I've heard it or seen it elsewhere, that involving them in your travel plans, and we're both avid travelers and plan to continue traveling with however many kids we may have, is having them actually, you know, plan out your travels makes them so much more involved and actually enjoy it. And we're not quite there yet, but hopefully having them collaborate or be very involved with the travel planning will actually keep them off the screen more. So we'll see how that goes, but that's kind of an idea behind it as well, just to make sure that they can plan stuff that they're going to be interested in the future as well. Okay, so that's collaboration. And on to the last one, kindness. It doesn't need that much explanation, but in general, of course, you want to treat others how you expect to be treated. We always want to treat our kids kindly, as you would others. And obviously in return, that is probably what we would expect.
Yeah. So when I was thinking of kindness, I was thinking of like, instead of rushing to fix their problem, just showing them a lot of empathy and understanding for the situation. So for example, like let's say it's a sports competition and like your kids' team lost, instead of coming up with reasons like why the other team was better, or like why they lost, or justifying any of it, just like making your kids understand that it's totally okay to lose, and like leading with empathy and with like compassion, and making them understand that it'll happen many more times in their life and it's totally fine.
So that is essentially the T.R.I.C. framework that we are doing our best to implement in how we raise our future kids. And that said, with that, it kind of led on to more of a conversation about values. Now, Leo and I, once a week have a weekly review on how we're performing as partners towards one another. And within that, we also go over how we feel we're implementing the T.R.I.C. framework within our family. Mm-hmm. That brought out the whole idea of values. And a large part of what he mentioned in the last one is also empathy. Freedom is one of our values. Empathy, kindness, resilience.
Perseverance, resilience, yeah.
So along those lines, as you can tell, and this is why we identified so much with the T.R.I.C. framework in raising successful people. This is not to say we expect our kids to be the next CEO of the biggest company or whichever. The idea is really just that they are happy. And that is essentially what success means to us for this framework. Because at the end of the day, when you ask people what is success, it means something different to everyone. For us, it really is just that they are happy. And we hope that with the education and the way we think, the mindset at home, we can open their mind to just different ways of, being as a human. Would you like to add anything about values?
No, I think you did a podcast on this previously, right? About our weekly reviews where we talk about...
Not yet.
Okay. So yeah, actually, I really like how we started implementing the T.R.I.C. framework in guiding our weekly sessions where we talk about hey, how did we live our life according to our values, especially for our family. And I'm super excited as our kids get older, kids get older, that we are able to take them on board for these sessions and talk to them about how we've lived life according to our values as a family and whatever values they come up with, whatever may be important for them. So I'm excited about that.
As am I. Well, there you have it. This is a short overview of how to trick your kid into being a successful person. Again, within the framework from Esther Wojcicki. If you haven't read the book, highly recommend it. And otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments or reach out to me at hello@partnersbeyondparenthood.com. I'd be very excited to hear any of your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining me today, Leo.
Thank you so much for having me on here.
And see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in and sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you've just watched and enjoyed this video, I'd be so grateful for a like and if you'd hit the subscribe button. With your support, I'll be able to invite bigger guests and provide more value. If you're listening to the audio only, make sure to follow this podcast to get tips on parenting and partnership and hear inspiring stories from other parents as well. See you next week.